I know everyone has so many things that they could be doing right now. So we'll see. Lisa was planning on coming, and so was Michael. So we'll see if they make it, but we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining. I don't see anyone else in here, so I will take my mask off for the moment. We can take care of some business real quick. We've got 2 sets of minutes to approve, the October and the November.
So moved.
Thank you, Dan. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Trisha.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. And Trisha, this is fantastic. Perfect time for me to introduce Trisha to everyone. She is the newest member of the Economic Development Committee. She was at one of our meetings earlier just to observe, and she has been very involved since then. She has a background in marketing and publishing and was really involved with the Kent Chamber and has recently moved to town and is ready to jump in and help us out. So we're excited to have her with us. So thank you.
Excited to be here. Thank you so much, Michelle.
You're welcome. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll just sort of give you a quick report on what some of the things I've been working on this last month. Oddly enough, I had 2 conferences. I haven't attended an in-person conference in a long time. I think the COG had one earlier, an economic one earlier in the year. But everybody decided to quick do them, I guess, in the fall. So it was November 30th. I went to the CCM convention, which was great. It was huge. It was all of the state, hundreds of people. It was Mohegan Sun. Jim was there as well. And we received the plaque for the sustainable CT that was presented at lunch. And I just thought I'd tell you really quick that I attended 3 workshops. The first one was called CT Trail Finder, Engaging Trails and Green Space for Economic Development and Public Health. There's some really interesting ideas that were presented there, plus just resources for trails. This is about outdoor stuff. So I did actually, after that, take my notes and meet with Brian over at Steep Rock to just talk a little bit about Steep Rock and their, how visible they want it. They want to be visible. During COVID, they were a little bit overrun. So, but we don't want to keep them completely hidden. So whether we're talking about signage or, they're a huge amenity for our town. So just partnering with Steep Rock to make sure that we are helping promote them as they promote the town. Because when people come to go hiking, they then come back into town to find something to eat. And so it's great for our towns as well. So that was an interesting workshop. The second workshop I did was an update on affordable housing and land use legislation. It was all about Public Act 21 through 29. I learned a lot. I realized I have a lot more to learn. I shared sort of the beginnings of what I found out with the Housing Commission. I think it was last week. And I will need to reach out to zoning and just kind of figure some of that out. But the bottom line is the state passed new legislation that's going to probably require some updates of a few of our zoning regulations in relation to multifamily housing, more diverse housing, all along the lines of affordable. But until I line it up with exactly what we have, I don't know exactly what those modifications would need to be, and we're going to need the land use lawyers. So actually it was suggested that I reach out to the COG to see if, because all the towns are going to have to work on this, on updating their regulations. So I will do that at some point. And then the third one I attended, third workshop was just an ARPA advisory committee. And it was an interesting, I heard about what some of the other towns are doing, but didn't have anything that I felt I needed to bring back. So that was that convention. And then I attended the Connecticut Economic Summit in Hartford. which was put on by the Office of Economic and Community Development. That was a much smaller convention, but also pretty interesting. And there's just one thing I wanted to share. Well, two, the overall gist is that the state is mostly focused on the large cities. They're focused on transportation, infrastructure, large cities. So finding things that are applicable and that we can translate to our small towns is a little more challenging, but it's interesting to hear about what they're working on. I just wanted to share one thing because it relates to something later though. Their keynote speaker was Paul Romer. He's a professor at NYU right now. He's a Nobel laureate, and he was the former chief economist at the World Bank. Pretty smart guy. And his talk his speech was entitled "The Role of Government in Creating a Healthy Economy." And again, he talked a lot about infrastructure and things like transportation and supporting, but advanced CT. The first question that Paul got was, what can we do to help people get back into the workforce? Because we're talking about the labor shortage, which is what we were talking about at our last meeting, about how hard it is to hire people. And the very first thing he said was invest in childcare. So yeah, it was yeah, and he talked about all of the programs that the state is working. He didn't mention them all, but the governor in his speech talked about investments in childcare, and it is one of the things that is in the ARPA funds is investment in childcare, because people realize if you don't have childcare, it's very hard for parents to work. So I thought that was very interesting, and I will share more about that later when we talk about childcare. So affordable housing plan, it is now all approved, and I have distributed, I've put hard copies here in town hall and up at the library, and I gave hard copies to the zoning and planning commissioners. And so now our job is to just start working on it. And I'm helping with a lot of the communication components, getting things on the website, and I'll keep you posted on that. Sustainable Connecticut, the committee continues to meet, and interestingly, what we're working on at the moment is putting together a team, a resiliency team that's going to work with the Nature Conservancy sometime in late January, early February, to put together a resiliency plan. All of our neighboring communities actually have done this already. I was sort of surprised. Litchfield, Woodbury, and New Milford have all participated. And it's a lot about emergency preparedness for disasters, for power outages, for flood, communication issues, any other types of disasters that we may have. I spoke that today we want to make sure that somebody from the business association is involved, because when we have these major storm events, it affects our businesses as well as our residents. So I'll keep you posted on that work. For the new homeowner mailings list, we have 5 for November. It's a little slower, but I think that's a little more traditional. Just a quick, the newsletter went out the first week of December. I distributed, it went in all the mailboxes, and I have some here at Town Hall, but I also brought a big stack over to the market, brought some up to the library. I brought a pretty decent stack over to Marty's, and they disappeared within 2 or 3 days. I went back in, and I was afraid they'd put them away. I asked Cheryl, I said, Cheryl, where are the newsletters? She said, they're gone. So I might actually think about just printing a few more, because that seems to be a hot spot where visitors come in and they pick it up, or people see it and want something to read. So I thought that was interesting. Holiday in the Depot. Whew. So that was December 10th. I know, wow, glad we made it through another one. It was wonderful from what I hear. Very, very well attended. Fran, I love that you're here. Maybe you can share with me. I was stuck here in Town Hall helping out with Santa, so I did not get to see a lot, but I saw it all in the setup. The WBA does all the luminaries, and so that was sort of my job, was to get those out, and I had help from Rumsey students putting them out, and then I gathered them with my family at night. But I heard from others that it was just the largest turnout and that it was a really wonderful evening. And I'm glad that a lot of the businesses chose to play it a little safe and keep people outside, because obviously we were just at the beginning of the rise of our COVID numbers. So Fran, what do you have any reflections?
Well, Lisa's on the call too, so Lisa may want to chip in, but from my point of view, it was a huge success. I mean, kids were running around, everyone was having a good time. It worked well. I mean, we were closed for business, but we saw a lot of people, and it was just great community spirit. I mean, I'm not aware of any quote unquote flaws. Maybe someone else is.
I was at it, and there was an incredible turnout. The parking, you had to park back behind Sotheby's old office in Clem, back in the public park.
A lot.
It was full, but what a great event. What a great turnout. I've never seen so many people.
That's what I keep hearing. And when I looked out of the windows from up above, it looked really packed. So it's great. You know, anytime we can help with a community spirit, community building event, I think that's wonderful. Lisa, did you want to throw in anything on Holiday in the Depot?
No, I agree with everything they said. Jeff and I were comparing it, probably thought it was very similar numbers to what we had about, pre-COVID that
I
year.
agree.
We also saw some great numbers that year. And we thought that was our peak that year. Because I remember, Santa had to be there till, 8:45, 9 o'clock, and to get everybody through. And yeah, to me, it seemed very similar to that. So that's good.
I agree.
That means we brought back exactly what we had pre-COVID. So I think that's great.
I think the other thing to mention too is the pantry area. I mean, people were over in that area. I mean, the trucks were there decorated. And I think that was an achievement that hasn't always been quite as successful as we'd like to have it be. So I think that there was a broad sweep of where people went.
That's great. Yeah, we brought luminaries back there all along Titus and around the circle in front of pantry, hoping that it would just let people know that, hey, there's stuff going on here and they're open. And those trucks really help. I didn't get to see the placement of the final placement of trucks, so I didn't get to see that, but I'm glad.
I heard that there was Santa flew in from Columbia, South Carolina, South America. Was that true?
It is very possible.
I recognize that he is rumored to be a resident here in Washington, but I maybe that had something to do with the appeal and the draw, was seeing Santa fly in and out.
Could be.
Yes, Santa was one of our very active WBA members. I'm not going to divulge more, but yes, we're thrilled. And Santa did a wonderful job. My job was to work the line, controlling people in and keeping it moving, and keeping the masks on and everything. So it was a long night, but Santa did a great job. All right, if we don't have anything else to share on that, moving on to the Depot lights. Hooray, a big hooray. I just want to put out a huge shout out to Daryl and Wright Electric and Bill and Jocelyn over at Arbor Services for getting those lights relit. So just to back up, we had a whole bunch of, we had 200 lights on order. We ordered them in August. They're still sitting on a shipping container. We had new trees to go up. We had businesses that had sponsored them and we were ready to go, but the lights didn't come. So we relit the existing trees. When Daryl did the test run at the end, right around Thanksgiving, half of the lights were out. So that meant that they had to go back into the trees and replug in, or a lot of the wires just got pulled. So they reattached them, and they were able to get almost 100% of them relit, and they just beautiful. So that was a big scramble at the beginning of December, getting that all coordinated. So I'm thrilled with that, and we'll keep you posted. We kept those lights on order because we're gonna start getting the plans in place for the new trees, late summer, early fall, so that we don't have that happen again. So just another one of the COVID issues that we all are dealing with. All right, I want to give an update on the childcare. We have talked about this quite a few times at Economic Development, and at some point, and all the documents, actually, I think I have some new documents now, but the documents I've been putting on the EDC website, whether it's the survey that we did demonstrating need or some of the preliminary information. But we were at the point now where we're getting hiring an architectural firm to just do a feasibility study and get some drawings together, so that we can get a bit of an estimate. And to pay for the first part of that study, I was able to use a grant that I had obtained for the childcare, and $1,500 from the EDC budget. But in order to get to the second part of the architectural study, I needed to request $8,400 that the Board of Finance approve, an additional expenditure. First, I brought it to the Board of Selectmen. I think that was December 9th. And then they approved that and moved it to the Board of Finance. And that was just last night, and they approved it. So I'm thrilled that we get to move forward with that. I want to thank Kristen and Robin for being there to hear some of the questions that the Board of Finance and the public had. Because, moving forward, if we get to move forward, if the study comes back with an estimate that seems reasonable and doable, and they don't find any major issues, then we will need to continue to communicate with the public. We're going to need to bring it to the public, the project as a whole to the public. So there's a lot more that will need to be done on just the whole scope and plan for the project. But thankfully, we get to move forward to at least get the information that we need to make sure it's possible. So that was a very, very good first step.
Have you had conversations, Michelle, with Region 12?
Oh, yes. Megan's been part of the planning team.
Well, that was going to be my second question. Is the intent to put them up in the Chappaq School?
The central office?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And do they already do we need to provide any funds for them to make the transition?
No, she's actually put it in her budget. She's wanted to do this for a long time and just hasn't risen to the top of the list for urgent things. COVID, building an agri-science building. I mean, there were a lot of things going on, but
okay.
When the interest in the childcare came along, she said, that's a good little push. I've been wanting to do this. So if we don't decide to move in there, she might not move up this year. She might just decide, all right, it's not a priority yet. But she's always wanted to be up there. More of the staff, more of the students are up there, and it's more central to the rest of the district. So yeah, that has been actually a plan of hers for years.
Okay. If she were to communicate that she will be moving sort of regardless of what we do, is it likely that people will come forward with other uses for that building?
It's possible. And we talked about that. We've talked about it a little bit here, and we talked about it in the committee that's working on it. There's a couple of things that are make that site challenging for use in anything else. And part of that is its proximity to the school. Because of safety concerns and the fact that delivery people have to have background checks these days, like companies need to be vetted before they can come on site. So its proximity to a school makes a daycare very applicable, but might not make a lot of other very public uses as applicable. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean it's impossible.
Okay,
The second floor also is we're not looking at using the second floor. The second floor would require much more work to get in there. It hasn't been touched in a long time. And since office space isn't at a premium at the moment, I don't see a lot of other things coming forward, but it's always possible.
okay. Thanks, you've answered my questions.
Sure. All right, the last thing I have on the list to report is just the community center. The fact we have people volunteered to come forward. The next phase is fundraising. We have a small committee of people that agreed to do that. And Dean Sargent, one of the selectmen, is leading that team. And I believe we'll be starting in January is the last I heard. So I just wanted to let everyone know that it hasn't been forgotten. It's just has been lingering for a little bit, but we'll get up and running. And that's it for my report. Does anyone have any questions on anything that I've reported so far, or that I forgot to? No.
Michelle,
right.
just a quick note on the community center. Dean Sargent's going to be taking point, and we will indeed be meeting with the fundraising branch of the committee. We've got about 20 community volunteers to date that have all provided their contact information and various points of interest they have relative to the community center. So yeah, definitely back on track with that moving forward.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Jim. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the passport update. And when I say passport, I feel like sometimes we call it the passport and sometimes we call it the guide to Washington. But that just to let you know, the work on that has started. This just so everyone knows what we're talking about. It is this, right? Everyone's seen this. We spoke at our last meeting, but not everyone was there, about agreeing to go ahead with the update. Everyone felt it's really important. I didn't realize that this will be the third printing. I think the first two were very close to each other, and that this one, it is now a couple years old. And there are some businesses in here that are no longer with us, and there are new businesses that need to be added. Last year, part of our project was to update the map that is in the back, which we did do with a lot more detail. So, and I will share that. I'll make sure I send that out, or at least for our next meeting, because by our next meeting, we probably will have an updated version to take a look at. Julia was actually going to be here today, and she's not feeling well. She had her booster shot yesterday and is feeling pretty crummy. So she was going to give you an update. She's got a shared document, and she's been working with Fran, and somebody else is working with Fran. Is it George?
George Criolla. George.
Yeah. So Fran and George from the WBA are working on it, and I've taken a look at it, and with some, just trying to update, make some of the business corrections. Also, Trisha took a really deep dive, close look at it, and gave us a lot of notes, some suggestions about sections and categories and things. And I sent that all along to Julia. Some of it she had already kind of been thinking of doing as well, adding, some of the categories a little confusing. I think restaurants versus something, I forget what it was. So anyway, I just want to let you know that work is underway, and hopefully by the next meeting we'll have a draft to take a look at. I might also send an email out at some point. There are a few businesses that just need to be verified. And maybe maybe people can help by either driving by, giving a call. You know, I haven't been able to verify from the website that they are still actually there. So we're kind of working on that. A couple of things, you know, things, just making sure people are still doing some of the things they used to be doing that it says in their blurb. So I will send that around once we have something to work on. And also, just so you know, we have not yet decided how many to print. The printing is going to be done with the WBA and the businesses, so they can have their imprint on the back if they want. And the WBA is going to print a certain number of copies. So the EDC is funding the design work, and the WBA is going to work on the printing. Not that the EDC won't print as well, but that's still yet to be determined. So we'll work on that. Did you want to add anything, Fran?
No, but Lisa might. I mean, you know, obviously with the season that we're in, not as much. I mean, if this were January that this initiative had been undertaken, it would be further along. But once we get beyond this week, George and I should be able to accomplish a lot quickly. And Julia's notes are quite copious in terms of her suggestions.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're already making good progress. We've got a lot of good input. Lisa, were you going to throw something in?
No, I'm good. I think everything's pretty much covered. And I think we're still looking at some of the businesses that did. I know some of the people that did purchase them before are looking to do them again with their logo. I know Julia had already reached out to the Mayflower, so that was one that was interested. And I know Matthew's group as well. So hopefully the other ones will join in so we can get the copies up to 5,000 to keep the print cost down. That's our goal. Our goal is to print 5,000.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, so just so everyone knows, we looked at the proposal last time. If we get up to 5,000, the cost per piece is much, much less. It's like half, maybe even less than half. So the more that the businesses choose to print, the easier it'll be for us to get to that number. I think, and the schools printed a bunch as well in the past. I don't know if we've reached out to them yet, but I know Frederick Gunn, now with their new name, is definitely going to probably want to jump in there again, and possibly Rumsey as well. I think they both printed in the past. All right, if there's no other discussion on that, there wasn't anything to approve, it was just an update. The next order of business is to approve the calendar for 2022. I did send that out to everyone. Let me see if I have it. I can share it here, but just, can you see that? The calendar? Okay.
Yes.
Not that these dates, I mean, it's the same. It's the third Tuesday of every month, 3 o'clock, Zoom and in person. And as far as I could tell, when I went through, none of those days fell on a holiday. So that is the proposed calendar for next year. Would someone like to move that we approve that?
I move we approve it.
Is that Kristen? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Robin, okay. Any comments or questions?
No.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Great, thank you so much. That, let me just take that off the things to be done. All right, the last thing under old business is a kind of update where we are on the kiosk. We talked about the kiosk at the last meeting. We had put out a call for designs and received two people sort of reached out, one person seriously, so that was good. But we also, Jim received quite a few letters not too happy with the whole concept. And we talked about that at our last meeting. I won't go over all of it again. So we sort of rethought the whole idea a little bit. Kristen and I took a little walk around the depot, and I spoke with Jim afterwards as well. And we have an idea that I want to bring to you all that we can just sort of brainstorm a little bit and flush it out. But the idea is to create a bit of a welcome center at the current senior center in Legion Hall. And because we're using those bathrooms as our public bathrooms, which we haven't put the signage up yet because we were still testing that, but we need to get the signage up for that. Lisa and I talked about that a little bit, about getting signs in the stores around. So since we're already using the bathrooms and there's a foyer there with a magazine rack, we could actually maybe spruce that up a little bit and put some of the guides and brochures that we were talking about, maybe putting in this kiosk. We could put there. There's already a bulletin board there. Again, we could maybe spruce that up a little bit. So let me just share, just so we can kind of, I'm just going to share a picture just so you can visualize what we're talking about. This is the current senior center. And we were thinking that we could maybe add so first of all, the sign needs repainting. So we're going to, all of this is owned by the town. So we need to just take a little look here at a little, it needs a little TLC. It needs some freshening up. But if we were to have maybe a sign hanging under a smaller one under Washington Senior Center, maybe underneath, whether it said Welcome Center or, well, I can't think of what, maybe something else, but having a Welcome Center sign right there. We also were looking at, it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah, the Legion sign is in disrepair. It needs to be redone, but there's space here and there's space here. If one of these were to be moved, there's space above the door. If we wanted to put a sign that said Welcome Center there, we could possibly do that as well. So there's a couple of different things we could, and we could also spruce it up a little bit, whether we wanted, there's like one little bench here, but whether we put a couple planters there or something to just make it more inviting and to draw people in. Yeah. So that is one thing that we talked a little bit about. I have a picture of the Kent Welcome Center, which looks actually a lot like this building, and it has a nice map on the outside and has bathrooms. So there's definitely examples of this out there. And then what we talked about in the depot, instead of the big kiosk that we were talking about, but we discussed maybe scaling down to something much smaller, and a very nice like metal sign that maybe had the map on one side and the QR code bringing people to Explore, because as Dan reminded us, Explore really is an electronic kiosk. That was the whole point of it. So the QR code bringing us to Explore, a little sign directing people to the Welcome Center, bathrooms available, stuff like that. Another exciting development is that we're looking at a water fountain possibly going in. We had talked to Chrissy Armstrong, had reached out because she wanted to sponsor it. She's working with Judy Black. They might put a water fountain in at Judy Black, but the location for the map and the direction to the Welcome Center, everyone agreed last time, the ideal location would be between 5 Janes and the market in that little grassy area there, which is Lisa's father's property. So we'll need to ask for permission. We will let him think about that, but we could obviously work with them to make sure it's something that would be to their liking or would work as far as they're concerned. So that's a lot of me talking. Let me hear what people have to say, thoughts on some of this.
Michelle, can I just add, when you're talking about a water fountain, it's not like your classic schoolyard water fountain. It's to fill the water bottles that people carry around with them there.
Correct.
So if people work in terms, I'm just trying to make
Yeah,
it clear.
and I wish I had the picture with me. I don't know, I might have a hard copy. No, I don't know. Or did she email it? No, it's the really cool water fountain that, it's a water bottle filler. But this one actually has a little bowl at the bottom for dogs as well. And they're frost free. Oh, I do, I have it. Yeah, you're probably not gonna be able to see that if I hold it up, but that's a little sort of what they look like. There's different variations and I forget which one they were looking at, but I think they were thinking of black. It's metal, it's very unobtrusive, and it will be year round. And Judy Black is looking to put one in. We'll have to look and see where, but hopefully, it'll be highly visible so that people will see that. So that's sort of another nice thing. Originally, Chrissy and I had talked about putting the welcome map and the water fountain together, but they've since moved over to Judy Black, which I think is also great. So do we have any thoughts or questions?
I have a question. I'm pretty familiar with the Kent Welcome Center. And the biggest problem they seem to have was a person to restock the racks with all of the materials, and also a person to take care of the cleanliness of the bathrooms. So that was their two big issues.
Yeah, so that's kind of, and I'm not surprised. And the restocking of the materials was sort of one of the concerns last time about the kiosk, just
Yeah.
nice and neat. And I said that would be one of the things I would do, is I would make sure I would try to keep it stocked and timely.
Yeah.
And we can also, Pam, our current senior center director, is there every day. So
Oh,
she should
good. Okay.
at the very least send me an email and say, hey, this stuff, we could use some more newsletters or something. And the cleaning, so we've been open, they've been public bathrooms technically for about a year now. We did close a little bit for COVID. And we were kind of testing out the whole cleaning and the hours. And I believe that the cleaning we already had in place was sufficient. Is that correct, Jim? I mean, have
Yeah,
you?
we have a cleaning service in once every 2 weeks. It goes through both bathrooms.
And so
But
far,
if you're promoting the bathrooms, I didn't know about them as a new resident, but if you're promoting them, you're gonna have more people going in if you're.
right,
you're
correct.
doing it.
If we promote them, I mean, we have told the businesses in the depot to go ahead and tell people that they're available. But we haven't done the signage yet because we were kind of
Right.
testing it. We had this
Sure.
time, we have somebody opening them on the weekend, but I wasn't always sure about the times, and Lisa and I are gonna nail that down.
Okay.
And during the week, I think they're closing at 3 when Pam leaves. So we may want to talk about that. So we'll talk about the times they're open. It would be nice if they covered at least the general sort of 9 to 5. I mean, I know the market's open until 6 most days, but if we got the bulk of the day, the daylight hours when the hikers are coming back and they're getting their lunch and stuff, I think that would be really helpful. So we can work on nailing down the time, and we'll keep an eye and see if once they're promoted, if we need to up that cleaning a little bit. But so far it hasn't been
Right,
an issue.
right.
So cleaning and opening. So between Lisa and Jim, we can work on that.
My other observation or question is, I've only been in the, I'm a member of the Lions and we meet there. And I haven't noticed, but the doorways are wide enough and there's enough room for ADA compliance.
I believe so, actually. Only through the front door,
Yeah.
not obviously up the
Okay.
stairs and through the
Just
back.
asking. Right,
Yeah,
right.
but I believe
only-
so, because
Okay.
the bathrooms are immediately to your right, and
Yeah.
that hall is pretty wide, and I think they're ADA compliant doors, but I can.
And there is an ADA bathroom in there?
I think they both are. There are 2 bathrooms. It's a men's
The
and women's.
women's room definitely has a
Yeah.
larger swing door.
They're both ADA compliant.
Yippee. Okay.
Great.
The women's is a little sad looking though, but
Yeah.
it might need a little like
Like
one of the
sprucing up.
cabinets is kind of falling apart,
Yeah.
but so it might need some sprucing up too.
Good. Well, that's easy enough.
Yeah, and so between the EDC, you know, we were looking at building a big kiosk, and if we end up kind of scaling that back to the and focusing more on this welcome,
Mhm.
you know, maybe we can help spruce it up. Maybe we can
Yeah.
put some money in the budget for next year in the town. You know, it's a town-owned building. It's a town-owned building, but it's used by the Legion and it's the senior center. So I don't know, Jim, maybe at some point if we want to move forward with this, who would we need to meet with? Would we need to meet with the Legion?
No, I think the best course, Michelle, would be to submit any of those thoughts to the Building and Property Commission, which
Okay,
meets on a monthly basis, and then we would in turn build that into their budget.
okay.
And just to recap quickly on the water stations, I had a brief conversation with Chrissy Armstrong and Judy Black, and the thought was, we've got 3, if not 4 of those units in this year's budget, was to station one of them there at Judy Black, so they don't need to come up with the funds to do that.
No, that's great.
That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
and I think, isn't the challenge the installation, you know, getting the plumbing deep enough so that it's frost-free?
Yeah, well, not only that, but the old, as many of us know, the old Judea system is a bit like Roman plumbing. It's very difficult to deal with here in the depot, but we'll get it figured out.
Great, that's excellent.
Possibility of maybe putting one of those stations in that hallway by the bathrooms? That way you don't have to worry about the frost free and.
Yeah, Kristen, if Judy Black allows or desires to have it there, we'd absolutely put it there.
Okay, just an idea.
Wait, do you mean inside Judy Black or inside the Legion Hall?
Inside the Legion Hall front hallway. I mean, wait, maybe there could be one in Judy Black and one there, but that way you don't have to worry about getting below grade for freezing. And people are going in that way to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
For your water bottle, there's a fountain there.
It's also a draw to pick up some literature while you're there.
True.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, having one inside the welcome center near the bathrooms with the literature. For some reason, I feel like there might be one in there. Does anyone know? Can somebody visualize? Was there a water fountain in there?
There's more of a traditional water fountain, I believe. And currently the problem, and I just had Aquarian out this week, everything on that side of Canoe Brook is subject to, there's a main water line that runs above Canoe Brook. When it's submerged in the water, it's fine. When it's not, in the winter, it freezes and everyone on that side of the brook loses water. So right now, Aquarian's project is to get that wrapped and insulated. Of course, they've got to work in a brook, it's a wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a little bit of the push right now, or a little bit of the issue with everything on that side of Canoe Brook.
So does that mean the senior center loses water every time it freezes? What?
Correct, correct. When that pipe freezes, senior center, the residents, the pizza place, they all lose it. I mean, they're gonna have it corrected by year's end in the next couple of weeks, but.
That's remarkable to me that it's been like that for so long. Okay, well, great. So you can keep us up to date on that. We won't obviously mess with the water inside, but we can kind of take a look at whether that water fountain maybe could be updated to also be a water bottle filler. I also don't remember, I don't think it's in the front foyer part. I think it's further down the hallway. And when the senior center is not open and it's just the bathrooms, those inner doors are locked. So we can take a look at that. I think having the one in Judy Black, though, that is outdoor is great because it's available at all times, whether it's open or not. So hopefully with that one, hopefully that installation will move forward. So anyway, we did some those are great thoughts. And I think what we'll do is over the next month, continue to put some thoughts and plans together. Sorry. I know, I don't know why I'm not moving enough. So we'll put some thoughts and plans together. I had intended to have that done for this meeting, and between the holidays and some of the other projects, the childcare, I didn't get to move forward much on this, but we'll get some ideas together. Just so you know, it was Amanda at Anvil, Connecticut. Is that the name of their company? CT Anvil, that offered to work on the sign. So maybe I'll reach back out to her and maybe we can start thinking about what that could possibly look like, and start getting together some proposals for what we think might work well at the senior center.
Hey, Michelle, you
Yeah.
guys might have talked about this last week, and I apologize that I missed it. Was there a reason not to maybe put the welcome stuff by Judy Black where those picnic tables are? Because that seems like a really good central location. I mean, I don't know.
So you mean the the sign?
Yeah, the
pointing
map,
people towards
whatever.
the map. Yeah, I'm happy to talk to them. In the past, they've been pretty, I don't want to say protective, but just everything, you know, with their signage and anything
Sure.
that they promote is really specific to the park.
Right.
And this might be a little more general. Not that they put out the guidebooks and anything that they're sort of somewhat associated with. They agree to promote or put out, but I can certainly ask them.
It makes sense. I just wanted to know if that conversation the ship had sailed or not.
No.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions? If you have thoughts about the Welcome Center concept and the sort of scaling down kiosk, please share them with me, and maybe hopefully by the next meeting we'll have some more concrete thoughts to share with you, so we can have those ready for the building and properties committee. All right, moving on then to report of the WBA. Lisa or Fran, either of you want to share anything with us?
I don't think we have anything to report really. Unless Fran can think of something, but otherwise a lot of the stuff was covered. So I don't think there's anything outside of that we're specifically working on.
Okay.
The past book is really one of our focuses. So.
Yeah. I guess I would just let everyone know that the executive committee of the WBA has been meeting and has put together a calendar for some quarterly socials for next year, which I think is exciting because I think there was maybe only one this year. So I think that'll be great to kind of get the momentum of that back up. COVID has really been a challenge in so many ways. So I think that's exciting. Wayne, I see you turned your camera on. I know that you had something that you wanted to share.
Well, thanks, Michelle. It'll probably come as a huge surprise to everyone here that I want to talk for a couple of minutes about broadband. I had a couple things I wanted to share quickly. One is that a number of communities in our area have formed broadband committees to start working on the goal of bringing fiber to our communities. And although, of course, you all know I've been working on this for years, we don't actually have a broadband committee here in Washington, but I'm thinking with the new year, the time might be ripe for us to actually consider one. I know of at least two people in town who are interested in this, not counting myself. And there could be some really good work that could come from such a committee in the short term. Specifically, Jim knows a little bit about this, but specifically the ARPA funds that the town has received are eligible for use for development of broadband infrastructure in your community under certain circumstances. And this would be a circumstance under which that the ARPA funding would be eligible. Don Stein, who is the chair of the Northwest Hills COG and who is also a member of my Northwest Connect board, wrote a really great memo, a 2-page memo on this, which I will send out to Michelle, and you could perhaps forward it to everyone else. Jim, I'm sure, has already seen it. That really outlines how this could be used for broadband. And one of the things, the real takeaway from it is that the community, some of the communities already are engaged in this, some already have done it, but we should be really thinking about either a phase 1 engineering study to determine what would actually be involved in building out such a network, or like in Sharon, where we'd actually do a feasibility study. The ARPA funds would be eligible for these uses. Now, the difference between a phase 1 engineering study and a feasibility study is kind of splitting hairs, but essentially an engineering study, which we've already done for the city of Torrington, basically maps out the entire municipality. Every road, every street, every pole shows whoever, basically outlines for when you install exactly where it's going to be installed, exactly what type of fiber needs to be put at each street corner, It's very technical in nature, and not very narrative in nature. A feasibility study, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite. It may not have the technical information in terms of the granular level mapping, but it will be able to provide a narrative to the community as to what it entails and give a ballpark estimate of what it may cost. Sharon is actually in the midst of doing this right now. They've contracted with a company called Certex, and they're actually engaged in a feasibility study right now. They did not use ARPA funding for it, and the only reason they didn't is they had actually included it in a line item in their operating municipal budget before the ARPA funds became available. So they couldn't use the ARPA funds for it, but they would have if they could have. There are over half a dozen communities right now that have working broadband committees, including Salisbury, Kent, Sharon, Litchfield, Cornwall, Norfolk, and Bark Hempstead. I know I'm forgetting several, and so I think it's probably time we got in the game, and that crafting some sort of RFP or whatnot for a feasibility study or a phase 1 would probably be a good first goal of that committee. So that's kind of my pitch, and I'll answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks, Wayne. I just want to remind everyone that broadband is also exploring broadband, I'll say, is one of the goals of this year's EDC plan. Knowing that we want to move forward, obviously it's a large project. It's not something that can happen overnight, but continuing to get the word out and investigate is one of the things we wanted to assist with. So thank you, Wayne. Between planning and economic development, I think that sounds great. I just wanted to share one thing that I still need to research a little, but I attended a CCM talk on broadband, and they mentioned a couple of communities that are currently using, they call it the dark, what do you call the lines that go to the cell towers?
Dark fiber.
Dark fiber. All right, they had those companies there. And as part of their resiliency planning, they actually have multiple lines going to, because as we all know, if tree comes down on one place, you lose more than just your power. You lose we can lose the cell tower. So it's interesting to me that thinking about emergency preparedness and some planning might involve us trying to build out a secondary supply to our cell towers, and maybe that should be part of our intro as we, if there are baby steps to be taken, it might be building in some redundancy so we don't lose all of our communications every time the lines come down.
Yes, yeah, And for a small town, we're actually in pretty decent shape when it comes to dark fiber. Crown Castle, which is probably who are probably the group that spoke to you, because they are the
Yeah, they
they
were
are
on
the
the
main.
call and backroom school or something like that.
Yeah. So Crown Castle basically provides dark fiber services to everyone. I mean, including AT&T, Verizon, whatever. A lot of these companies, a lot of the wireless and cable companies don't string their own fiber to send their own signals. They actually just lease it from companies like Crown Castle. Plus, we also have CEN, which supplies dark fiber. They're supplying the signal for the Wi-Fi in the depot. They also supply internet services for the gunnery. I'm sorry, the Frederick Gun School. So we actually have 2 dark fiber providers in the town already, which bodes well. They're I don't know precisely where their network is, but essentially there's a dark fiber line pretty much on every state highway in the town.
which is it's a great start. So, maybe we could, as we look at whether it's emergency services in our firehouse and EMT and town hall, but
They already have it. The firehouse already has a hookup. All municipal fire companies do. But having it be more robust would be, of course, more, in communications, more is better. So that's something we would want to think about. But again, having a working committee in place would really help us to just literally pin down on the map where everything is and where we would like things to be.
Sounds great. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Wayne?
Wayne, would you envision that as a subcommittee of planning or more of a standalone?
I haven't thought about that a lot, Jim. I mean, actually, I think it could be a standing subcommittee of this committee. Although, high-speed broadband is important not only for economic development, it's important for medicine, it's important for education, it's important for emergency services, it's increasingly becoming important for agriculture. Farming is going to become very high tech, and you can't position drones and other equipment, whatever, if you don't have internet. So it's kind of everything. I mean, I'd have to think about that more, Jim. I don't know where that committee would reside or report to. My first instinct would be here, but maybe it does go to planning, or maybe it goes to the selectmen. I'm not sure.
Thanks, Wayne.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Last thing on the agenda, Jim, selectmen, do you want to have anything to report to us before we end this calendar year?
Sure, I would just touch a little bit on the resiliency. The single largest hurdle we face, beyond the shadow of a doubt, is Eversource. After Isaias, Pura made the effort to come down on them. There's been some improvements. We as a municipality now have a greater access, if you will, to the people that are calling the shots during a crisis event, and that's huge. We were left in the dark on a variety of levels during Isaias, and the bigger concern, that was an August storm. My bigger concern is a winter event that's going to put us in a real tough spot. But things have improved marginally, but Eversource still is the elephant in the room when it comes to where our residents are during a weather event. And we're continuing to work on that. To talk a little bit just about the kiosks, Michelle had mentioned some of the feedback, and the feedback was relative to, there were some with aesthetics. The patio would require input from the Board of Trustees, but I think the overriding concern was drawing pedestrian traffic through vehicular traffic, if that makes sense. So people were coming out of the post office or bank or the food market. With that on the lawn, we'd be drawing them across the vehicular traffic. So there was a variety of concerns, and I think any option, be it Judy Black or 5 Janes or the Senior Center, are all good options. And I think that's about all I have. I'd be happy to answer anyone's questions.
No questions for Jim?
No,
Right. Do we have any other comments or questions, visitors? No. All right. Well, I think that concludes this meeting and almost this calendar year. Thank you all for attending this nice tidy little hour we had there. I appreciate you all being here and I hope you all have a safe and wonderful holiday. Be careful and I look forward to seeing you in the new year. All right.
thanks, Michelle.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.